It's Pikmin season in the Nintendo community with the long-awaited Pikmin 4 nearly upon us. And in a rather surprising move, Nintendo decided to drum up hype for the title by re-releasing the first two games in the series on the Nintendo Switch. With this, every numbered Pikmin title is now available on the system, and so I thought it would be a fun idea to revisit each of these games in the build-up to the latest entry. By playing these games back to back, I can get a proper feel for how the series has evolved from each entry, both in good ways and bad ways. I'll be playing the Nintendo Switch version for each of these games, meaning I'm not going to talk about some of the unique features found in previous versions of the titles, like the gamepad functionality for Pikmin 3. However, that doesn't really matter for this video, as Pikmin 1 is a very simple game compared to what will come later. Going back and revisiting Pikmin 1 after playing the later entries requires some getting used to. The core gameplay is basically the same. Players control Captain Olimar and can lead an army of up to 100 Pikmin across a map to do various tasks, from finding and carrying objects back to Olimar's ship, to fighting off the planet's vicious wildlife, both big and small. It's a great gameplay loop that requires mastery and optimization. For newcomers, you might find yourself rushing an enemy by throwing lots of Pikmin at it, winning by sheer numbers, although this method can also lead to a lot of casualties. Thankfully, after an enemy is defeated, its remains can be used to make more Pikmin, and the circle of life continues. How beautiful, how brutal. However, later enemies will require a more tactical approach, whether it's about sneaking up on them while they sleep, or using fewer Pikmin that are easier to manage in order to lock the enemy into a cycle. And then there are some later enemies that are just better off ignored entirely because the reward for taking them out is just not worth the hassle. In fact, there were some enemies that I never saw while playing the game and only discovered they existed in the game's credits. This all says to me that while Pikmin 1 is a game where you want to explore and build up your army, sometimes playing more optimally and only taking what you need to survive is the most viable way to play. And playing optimally is the thing that makes Pikmin 1 stand out from its successors, as the pressure to do so here is far greater than in later games. Olimar only has 30 in-game days to find as many of his ship pieces as possible, and each day is about 16 minutes of real time. That means the playtime for this game is kinda capped at 480 minutes, or 8 hours. Failure to get enough ship parts in that time will lead to the bad ending, while getting every ship part will get you the best ending. When laid out like this, it can be a lot of pressure for certain players, as there are 30 ship parts to get, so going through a single day without getting any part can feel like a huge blow to progress. It's because of this that I found myself trying to be as optimal as possible, planning out routes as I ran around and tried to ensure each Pikmin type was doing something at all times, whether it was building a bridge or fighting an enemy. I was essentially min-maxing my progress, only increasing my Pikmin count if it was really needed, and focusing on opening up the map and finding all the parts to Olimar's ship. In the end, it took me 19 in-game days to beat Pikmin 1 to 100%, which is just over 5 hours, although that might not be completely accurate. But you see, I found myself on several occasions resetting a day and reverting to a previous save if something in my plan went awry. It could be as simple as me misclicking and blowing up a horde of Pikmin with a bomb, or running over to a location only to realise that I had the wrong Pikmin type and wasted my time. I felt the pressure to try again and not make any mistakes, and I know that won't be everyone's cup of tea. Sometimes you just prefer to go with the flow, but I couldn't bring myself to do that with this game. It doesn't help when a mistake happens that isn't your fault at all, which is bound to happen here as the Pikmin AI is not the brightest. I found that Pikmin could get stuck easily or end up jumping headfirst into water for no reason. There was even one point where they tripped and fell while carrying an object, glitched the object out, and then refused to carry it. I had to reset then, otherwise I feared the game would be uncompletable. The Pikmin themselves are also not born equally in Pikmin 1. While each one has specific traits and functions that make certain types required to progress, from the way the levels are designed, it's clear that certain Pikmin types are just more valuable than others. Blue Pikmin absolutely dominate this game as they can breathe underwater, and water is used as a major obstacle in the second half of the game. The penultimate level is basically just a massive lake, and the level before it, where you get the water Pikmin, has sections of the map that is just water. Lots of enemies in this section also have a tendency to live in the water or float above it, so water Pikmin are essentially the only ones you can use. Yellow Pikmin, on the other hand, are the most useless. They are lighter, so can reach higher places, and they can carry bombs which are used to break stone barriers, but these are all fairly context-sensitive situations. The only thing high up are Olimar's ship parts, as most flying enemies are close enough to the ground that any Pikmin can take them out, and once you've opened up every barrier, they don't close up again, so bombs aren't really needed unless you want to slowly kill a strong enemy bit by bit from a distance. And yellow Pikmin are pretty bad at fighting, especially compared to red Pikmin who excel at it. And because red Pikmin will be the first Pikmin type you find, you'll almost certainly have more of them to spare in battle, making them the optimal Pikmin for taking down enemy obstacles. This is even more the case because fire enemies are the only elemental enemy type in the game, bar a single water boss. Red Pikmin are immune to fire, so these enemies are just a non-threat to anyone but Olimar, and can be dogpiled with ease. Speaking of bosses, there aren't a lot of them, and they aren't that hard. The Armoured Beetle and the final boss are the only ones that require some extra thought to take down, and most can just be piled onto by your Pikmin, and then called back by Olimar before they get eaten or crushed. One thing I will say though, is that aiming in this game is not as easy as you would hope. The game primarily uses the button controls found in the original GameCube game, but it has the option for motion controls as well to try and match the Wii version. But I don't think motion controls work very well here. More often than I like, I found that Olimar would completely miss enemies I was aiming at, and the lack of depth perception made hitting specific targets really awkward. It definitely isn't as nice and fluid as the Wii pointer was back in the day. Overall though, despite obviously being the first game in the series and suffering from some of those early concept kinks, Pikmin 1 is still a lot of fun to this day. It's certainly not as pretty or as deep as later games in the franchise, but it holds up enough that I found enjoyment from it. The main two issues around this game are its length and mental difficulty. The game is far shorter, and the time limit on top of that certainly pushes Pikmin 1 to be a challenging game. It's clear, however, that the devs intended it to be this way, as upon beating the game I was given a rank and scoreboard for the days it took me to complete, the amount of Pikmin I lost, and the amount of Pikmin I grew. It's as if the game was telling me to play again and try and beat my high score, in a very arcade-like fashion. The unlockable challenge mode at the end also adds some extra arcade-like content to the game. So, if you are interested in playing Pikmin 1 for the first time today, just go into it with all this in mind. It might seem stressful at first, but the game is designed with replayability in mind, and honestly, even if you don't try to min-max like I did, the game isn't too hard. I managed to beat it on the GameCube back when I was a little child, barely 10 years old. I'm sure you'll all do fine. With that, we come to the end of this review for Pikmin 1. I'd like to thank Nintendo for sending us a review copy of this game, and I hope it does them well and brings plenty of people into the Pikmin franchise. Let us know in the comments if you're interested in picking up this game, if you're interested in getting into Pikmin, because this is a good starting point, even if it's a little bare bones compared to what will come later. On screen right now are all of our $5 patrons. I want to thank them and all of our patrons, to be honest. You can find out how to join them and get access to early content and access to our exclusive patron Discord features by going down to the description below. Also, if you could check out another video. If you're watching this the day it comes out, the Pikmin 2 video won't be out yet, but it will be next week. So if you're watching it after next week, go and watch that immediately after this one and help us out with the algorithm. Alright guys, like, comment, subscribe, so that you always remember to return to the source.